was a secular state until a few months ago. The British, the Americans, the British, they put HTS, terrorist Islamic fundamentalists, advocates of Sharia law, in power only a few months ago. And they turn around and say, anyone in England who says from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, is a hate marcher. And yet, the British government, the European governments, and the American governments financed and armed the HTS terrorists who have seized control of Syria a couple of months ago. And now in the news, last week, thousands of people are being rounded up and killed by the people we financed, we supported, and we cheered on, who are Islamic fundamentalists. And they were known, they were a spin-off of Al-Qaeda. Where did Al-Qaeda come from? Where did Bin Laden come from?
CIA.
They were financed and armed by the Americans and the British. British military trainers went to Afghanistan to give logistical and direct support, training support to Al-Qaeda, to Bin Laden. So the idea, yes, to fight the Soviets. What was the problem with the Soviets in Afghanistan? The problem was they didn't want Sharia law. The women used to go disco dancing in Afghanistan in the 1970s when the Soviets were in occupation. But when the freedom fighters, financed by Britain and America, military supplied by Britain and America, when they took control, they established Islamic fundamentalism. The Islamic fundamentalist headquarters is Saudi Arabia. The Saudi Arabians are directly related to America. They are in league with America. They created the Wahhabi ideology and financed it with billions and billions of dollars backed by America. A couple of years ago, they were dropping bombs non-stop on Yemen, Saudi Arabia. Now this morning, Donald Trump, that peace lover, he started dropping bombs on the Yemeni people. Why is he dropping bombs on them? Because the Yemenis have been fighting against Israel, and Israel is the biggest terrorist state in the world. They've slaughtered nearly 50,000 people in the last 2 years.
They don't go.
They're not terrorists.
They're not what? Terrorists. They're not terrorists. Terrorists are people who go and attack civilians.
Kill women and children.
There's a difference here.
How many
when someone goes into your home, physically takes your baby and unalives the baby, right? That's a terrorist. Someone who intentionally goes after.
Well, what do you do when you carpet bomb the whole
when you carpet bomb, when you're trying to get
children.
terrorists, who are underneath these civilians, right?
Children have lost their legs and arms. What do you call it?
What about October?
Let them finish.
October said it was a lie. There's a narrative. I'm a British nationalist.
The Israeli government minister said, we are not fighting humans.
It's called the Hannibal Directive, mate.
When these people are literally talking about unaliving Jews, and it's in their hadith, by the way. They say a day of judgment will come.
Jews?
I'm talking about Hamas charter, which has in it that the day of judgment will come until we kill the Jews.
Israelis the Hannibal Directive.
Until we kill the Jews, until they hide behind trees and stones. Right? That's in their book. They're taught that from a very young age. There's Palestinians.
Israelis do say.
I'm a Christian, mate, and I'm a Protestant.
You're not Christian, man.
But I'm not. Yes, I am. But I'm not a Christian.
Israeli that teach kids to hate.
I'm not a Protestant
We do
Zionist.
the same thing.
Why is Jesus coming to judge Gaza? If you're a Christian.
Jesus.
Have you read the Bible? Have you read the Bible?
Have you read the Bible? It's about the Bible. You see, the only reason the Israelis get away with the barbarity and the genocide they're carrying out is because there are large numbers of Christians in the West who seem to think that there's some biblical prophecy
If they
that
could
allows
have
them
10,000
to
Jews,
slaughter
they would
the
have.
people,
They would have done it.
the Arab people in the region, in order to establish a homeland for the Jews. This is nonsensical.
Why aren't you talking about what happened
You're
in
talking
Syria?
nonsense, my friend.
Why aren't you
You're
talking about what happened in Syria?
I just
When
did,
they were beheading
and you
black
ignored it.
Christians. When they
I
beheaded
did.
Christians.
Who's doing it? They're backed by Israel. They're backed by Israel. They're backed by Israel. They're backed by Britain. They're backed by Britain. They're backed by Britain. They're backed by America.
Oh, the Zionists.
The British establishment is Zionist
Guess what? The
control.
Jews are behind everything.
Who said that?
Jews are very smart
said
people.
Zionist.
Who said that?
They're the smartest people on
I was on a demonstration yesterday. I was on a demonstration yesterday. I was on a demonstration. Jamie. He's trying to keep that the meeting.
Yeah, I know.
By arguing just
In Egypt,
He needs to be told.
In Egypt, yeah.
He needs to be told. He's a Christian Zionist.
In
and he
Egypt, they
needs to
said
be
that the
told.
trucks.
Why don't you go over there? Go over there. There's a flag over there for you.
He's
There's a flag over
challenging
you.
you. Come on.
He can be done.
You don't like challenges.
How's he challenging? He's not debating at all. You're arguing here. You're not debating at all. You're not debating. I'm happy to
You
debate,
didn't
but you're
allow him
not
to finish
debating.
it. Come on. You didn't allow him to finish it.
Okay, don't intervene, Jamie.
standing on the board.
Don't intervene.
Yeah, I'm trying to talk to him.
So try.
Yeah, so I've asked you a question.
Yeah,
You're
go on.
saying
What's the
that
question?
the West has funded these terrorist groups, right?
And
Therefore,
And Israel
you're saying
too.
Israel. So I believe Islam is is where terrorism is coming from. Why? Because also, are you learned about the Arab slavery? Are you aware about the Arab slavery?
The Islamic fundamentalists
Yeah.
came about directly as a consequence of Western support.
Okay, that's what you believe. I believe
Western
I believe
sponsorship.
it's stemming from the Hadith and the Quran, which is which fundamentally teaches about unaliving.
So why
Hold
was
on
it
one
not,
second before you
why
interrupt,
was it
before
not
you
around
interrupt.
in the
Before you
1970s?
oh, so you believe that the Quran and Hadith just came about out of
No,
nowhere?
I'm saying they've been around a long time.
Yeah.
But why was Islamic
Yeah,
fundamentalism,
because
as we
they
know it
became
today, not
fundamentalist
around in the
over time.
1970s?
Because
Where
they
was
became
it?
that.
Instead of that was Arab nationalism. And when Arab nationalism was going, we bombed them as well.
So you believe
When
it's,
people advocated Arab nationalism, Nasser, Gaddafi, they weren't Islamic fundamentalists, but we bombed them. Right? That was more popular in those days. Is not Islamic fundamentalism.
About the doctrine of Islam.
How long have we been supporting Saudi Arabia?
So you actually.
How long has
Who's
Britain?
I'm actually talking about Islam being
So
the
do
problem.
you call for the overthrow of
I'm
Saudi
talking about
Arabia?
Islam
We're talking about
Saudi
the
Arabia,
doctrine
when
of
did they
Islam.
overthrow
Saudi Arabia?
When did Saudi Arabia eradicate slavery? When did they do that?
I'm not in support of Saudi Arabia.
Oh, you're not?
I'm asking you. I'm asking you. Why do we support Saudi Arabia?
I'm not. Well, I don't know why we support Saudi Arabia. Because of the
Why
oil.
do the
Because of
Christian
the oil.
countries support Saudi Arabia?
I don't support them. What are you talking about?
Why not?
So the Coptic Christians that died as
You
well.
don't follow the story, have you? You obviously don't follow the logic of your own argument.
What I'm saying is, when it comes to terrorism, they quote the Quran, they quote the Hadith. They don't say, "Oh, the Americans bombed us, so therefore we're going to attack them." No, when they're beheading people,
You
they quote the
supported,
Hadith. So you're wrong about Israel.
when you declared,
Of the Muslim countries,
when you declared
things from the Hadith,
your
from the
support
Quran, that's
for
what
Israel,
and that's what
when
the real
you
world sees.
Do you know about what happened in Congo the other day? You know about the 70 Christians that were beheaded by...
when you declared your support for Israel,
Go and speak your
you dragged up Christianity. Oh, it says so in the Bible.
gentlemen.
That's what you were saying. That's what you were saying. In other words, hang on, Jamie. Don't let him get away with that. Don't let him get away with it. You do not answer any question. I'm not.
He's a Marxist.
That's why I thought
No, you are not getting it. Because you're advocating
The
that.
Zionists are behind it all. They created
You're
modern
advocating.
But if you're going to say Christians, then you have to go to
Christian,
where Christians get the
Jamie,
doctrine. So
Jamie,
where in the
as a
Bible
Christian,
does
Jamie,
it tell
as a
Christians to
Christian,
do that?
the day of vengeance is about the
Yeah, where does it say in the Bible?
Why don't you debate
You don't know
rather
as much,
than
then don't say then it's not facts.
Israel's
Then you just copy what he's saying and what he's saying.
The day of
No, there ain't no
the day of vengeance, yeah, is about the Lord coming to fight the nations that come against Israel.
I understand that.
Where's the background? It's Jamie. What are you doing? Jamie. What are you doing?
You're not Christian, but no,
Why don't you just ignore him and
No. You want to keep talking. You can address the issues. I say something, you say something. I say something, you say something. But that's not what you're doing. Because you don't have any friggin' arguments. Zero arguments. Like that. Zero. From nothing, with nothing, to nothing.
Well, see you later, lads.
See, this story, I mean, it's just so simple. October the 7th was the starting point of everything. Islamic fundamentalists believe in X, Y, and Z. It's the narrative that a gang of people linked to the Zionists, like Donald Trump, like Elon Musk, one sec. Elon Musk, Donald Trump, Tommy Robinson, and co. They've been pushing this narrative again and again and again. The Islamics are responsible. The Muslims are responsible. The Islamic terrorists, they want Sharia law. And because there's some Muslims want that. Some Muslims are terrorists. Yes, we've had terrorist attacks, even nearby to here. Yes, we've had terrorist attack in Hyde Park. But I tell you what, the idea this comes out of nowhere, that there's no history, that the occupation of Africa by Britain, by France, that the occupation of America, North America, by Britain, by France, that the occupation of South America, by Spain, by Britain, by Portugal, that the occupation of China, by Britain, by Germany, by Russia, by Japan, the occupation of India, by Britain, the occupation of the Middle East, by Britain, by Italy, by France, that that's not the background to understand the world relation of power and how the existing order was established and why it keeps repeating itself, why Israel is supported, why the wars keep blowing up, why the refugees keep arriving. To extricate this from history is farcical. It's the side of an ignoramus. No historical knowledge, no ability to grasp today, and therefore moved with the wind, even when complete and utter nonsense is spouted. You know, Tommy Robinson talks about illegal immigration. It would be all right if he wouldn't have been arrested for traveling to America on a false passport, trying to immigrate there. It would be all right if his second home wasn't, for a time at least, wasn't Spain. It'd be all right if he didn't have an Irish and a British passport so that he could escape from one place to another. It would be all right if he knew something about the Irish history. Irish, by the way, were the occupied by Britain, plundered by Britain, starved by Britain. Irish were the slaves of the British. They even had them physically as slaves in the Caribbean. They took the Irish there as slaves. So the idea that these people have some knowledge of today without any thread connecting it to the past is extraordinary, and they want you to believe this shit. Whatever news story comes at you, whatever the latest thing on Piers Morgan is, or on CNN is, or on X is, or Donald Trump says, these latest comments are the ones you're supposed to follow, instead of looking at the historical background that lays the foundation for the edifice that constitutes the entire world order of plunder, robbery and theft across the entire planet. And then they wonder, oh, someone takes up a weapon and calls themselves an Islamic fundamentalist because they come from a Muslim background. As I said, Islamic fundamentalism was created, multiplied and generated by the United States, by Britain and by the Western powers.